Hi, everybody. This is the Google Hangout for Wiretaps to Big Data, the Cornell MOOC. We're just waiting right now for Professor Wicker to join in. I'm Stephanie Santoso. I'm the TA, one of the TAs for the MOOC. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope that this 30-minute discussion with Professor Wicker is going to be super engaging and really interactive. If you guys wouldn't mind just sitting tight for a couple minutes while Professor Wicker joins, that would be great. And please feel free to go ahead and submit your questions on the Q&A interface there. I see that some people have already started to generate some questions, so feel free to keep that up. Professor Wicker is going to be super engaging and really interactive. And it looks like Professor Wicker is here. Hi, Steve.
Hello, everybody. And let me see. I've got two voice connections. Let me see. I got to kill one. Should I get rid of the Google Plus or the WebEx?
So I think we're all set. Do you hear an echo now?
Nope, that's fine.
Okay. Sorry, I killed it. It was on my end. There was a bit of a duplication with the screens, but yeah. So Steve, can you see the questions on the right-hand side on your screen as well?
You know, I could see them before. I can't.
Hangout for Wiretaps to Big Data.
I can hear you again. Let's see. No, I don't see any questions on the right-hand side.
Okay, so maybe what would help is I could sort of I could read them off to you if you want, or if you wanted to start with any questions from the discussion board thread that was going around, we could take that route as well, whatever you'd prefer.
Why don't you read away, and that way we won't keep people waiting.
Sure, that sounds great. Let's see. So from the discussion board thread, Terry W91 had some really interesting suggestions for topics to discuss. So he or she says, sorry, Terry, is there something we can do to encourage or petition to have U.S. laws changed to protect our personal data? That was one question. And the other was, what are steps we can take to realistically protect our data and still take advantage of many of the benefits of the digital world?
Okay, let's start with the first one. To some extent, your congresswomen, and senators will still listen to you. So it certainly can't hurt to organize people to send lots of comments in, fill their fax machines, fill their inboxes. It's a good start. It certainly works. You will get some attention. With regard to easy steps to protecting your privacy while you're on the internet, the best thing you can do is whenever you are through with a session, clean out all your cookies. Just eliminate them all. For example, I use Safari. You go up into Preferences, you go to Privacy, you eliminate everything that's just been stored in your computer. And if you do this regularly, it'll make a difference. In fact, you'll see that it makes a difference in the ads and whatnot that come across. So there's a lot you can do. There's also some more long-term strategies you can adopt. Most of you are well aware of this, but I'll mention it anyway. If you get an email and it looks like it's from a friend and they want some information, don't answer right away. You know, double check, make sure it's from your friends. Don't click on links and provide them with information. You know, and if you're really, I'm fairly paranoid. I know that surprises you, but you can also check certificates, make sure they're valid. We talked a little bit about certificates in class from PKIs and things like that. So there's a fair amount you can do just by paying attention to what's going on. Don't do things automatically. Don't click automatically. Follow your instincts.
That's great. All right. So I'm just sort of scanning the discussion thread here, and then I just wanted to encourage those of you who are joining the Google Hangout to go ahead and submit any questions using the Q&A interface that's on the right-hand side of your screen. This is a question from Heba NB. So Heba asks, I have actually a very simple question. A couple of friends and I have been trying to compare internet browsers and have tried to see which one is the most secure. That's why I was wondering which internet browser that you, Professor, would prefer to use. Which do you think is the most secure and why?
That's actually a surprisingly complicated question. There are some browsers that have been discussed. I haven't seen them available that have been discussed that are designed to avoid certain kinds of flash cookies and other things. I find Safari gives me some control. I'm a little nervous about Chrome. Sorry, Google, but I can't imagine that it's terribly secure. One of the problems, though, at least with today's technology, is that your web browser is only part of the problem. You could be tracked by the websites themselves. They're sharing information. So even though you're keeping your web browser clean, you may still have issues. So be careful in your selection, clean out the cookies, etc. But there's other issues as well. Be wary.
And I would add that if you even want to get a sort of a visualization of how third parties are tracking you, you can use applications like Ghostery or Firefox has Collusion. And those actually provide you with some real insights and sort of these visual mappings which show when you visit a particular site, what other third parties are looking at your activity.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
So Shy Smart has asked, in as much as the U.S., so this one has to do with the U.S. military and Tor. So she or he says, in as much as the U.S. military originally developed Tor, and given that they still fund the Tor project in part, how secure can we really be using Tor, since the U.S. government would obviously have a good idea of how it works? Do we have even an educated guess as to how many exit nodes or relays the U.S. government controls? And wouldn't it be fairly easy to de-anonymize Tor users by controlling 1/3 to half of these nodes?
Okay, interesting questions. I'm not sure I completely agree with the premises. Tor, at least the folks that I know at Tor, are relatively independent. They don't consider themselves government employees. They think they're independent. In fact, they're working hard to keep their product, the ability to access internet sites anonymously, keep it clean. So I have faith in Tor at this point. I haven't seen anything that would tell me to stay away from it. So I wouldn't worry about that. You may be, there may be some truth to your assumptions, but I haven't heard those things. I'm not aware of them.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Steve. Let's see. All right. So we've got another one from Saransa S. Saransa asks, websites and phone operators seller provide the personal data of their users to the marketers and advertisers, which leads to targeted advertising. This is against the user's faith and trust. A government agency like NSA has authority to do so, but don't you think providing personal data for marketing is wrong and should be a punishable offense? What's your opinion on this?
Okay, that's a great question. And there's really two pieces to it. We've got two sources of surveillance. We've got the federal government in the United States and in other countries as well collecting personal data, for example, to fight crime, among other things. And we've got companies who are collecting personal data because they want to do directed advertising. They have found, and it's certainly the case, that return on investment is much higher when you've got a lot of information about your customers. Now, should it be illegal or is it illegal? If they tell you that they're collecting the data, Facebook may change its privacy policy on a regular basis, but they do have a privacy policy and they do tell you what they're going to do with your data for the most part. So long as they're operating within the boundaries of their privacy policy, it's not illegal. If they violate their privacy policy, on the other hand, the Federal Trade Commission in the United States is empowered to go after them, and the FTC has done this in a small number of cases. They have actually gone after people and said, you're not doing what you said you were going to do. There was a prominent Microsoft case dealing with Microsoft Passport in which Microsoft said they would treat certain data in a special way, and it turns out they didn't do it. It's a relatively old case, but an interesting one, and it shows what the FTC can do when it has enough power and time and money to police these policies. There have been recent cases, though, of, oh shoot, what's the word? Anyway, group action cases against certain companies where they were actually sued and it was alleged that they'd violated their privacy policies. These cases went nowhere. So really the FTC seems to be our main source in terms of protecting us against those who would violate the privacy policies. But in summary, if they say they're going to do it and they do it, it's not illegal. It's only when their privacy policy says they're not going to and then they do it, that's the issue.
I think the other tricky thing too is that you'll find that certain companies have their privacy policies are kind of these like moving, constantly evolving things, right? And like, you know, it may be that you signed up for a service and it had one particular privacy policy. You're a continuous user, and a year from that point, they revise their privacy policy, and you overlook the email that says that they have changed their policy or have new features where they're going to be profiling you. So it's a really tricky issue. I mean, the other kind of big complicated thing around this is the complexity of the informed consent as well, I think, right, Steve? It's just sometimes you sign up for something, it's a mobile app, you quickly scan the informed consent, which is, pages and pages of really complex legal jargon, and you don't necessarily realize what it is you've just agreed to do.
Those are two interesting points. The first, namely, that it seems like these companies in which we're already invested can suddenly change the ground rules overnight, and they can.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we're not violating our privacy policy because we just changed it. So.
Yeah. And I was in your neighborhood last week. I was in D.C. talking to the National Economic Council about that very other point you bring up, namely, what does it mean to give consent to a 65-page policy that no one reads? We check it off, we haven't read it, have we really given consent, is this meaningful? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's just not user friendly,
No, definitely not. It's corporation friendly.
So there's another question. This one has to do with the recent discovery of the Heartbleed virus. So G. Scott C. says, I've heard a lot about this Heartbleed virus, including that a lot of the sites in which are on the various quote-unquote safe lists are not really safe. What's the latest info on this disaster, and what's the best way to protect yourself?
Okay, so this is a big deal. It has to do with the flaw in the programming for something called OpenSSL. It gets to a layer of technology that we didn't spend that much time talking about. As you know, SSL is Secure Socket Layer. It's sort of an automated process by which your web browser can obtain an encryption key and have encrypted communication with a web server. When it works well, but apparently there was a flaw in the programming that allowed bad guys to go in and grab 64K of data at a time from these websites. And of course, if they repeatedly did this, they could get a fair amount of information from people who had visited the websites, potentially passwords, credit card numbers, and things like that. The details aren't known, though, because frankly, we don't know how many sites have been broken like this. But what we do know is that many prominent sites are going in, checking their programming, seeing if they have a problematic version of OpenSSL, and then changing it. So you should go to your favorite sites, go to the ones that have your data, and see if they've got a post up that says, you need to change your password. I don't think it's so serious that you need to go out and change every single password overnight, but you do need to check your favorite sites and see if they are recommending a change in password, because not everyone had this problem. But it is fascinating. There were some suggestions that the NSA was exploiting this, Obviously, we don't know, but they claimed today that they were not and had not exploited the OpenSSL flaw, Heartbleed.
It'll be interesting to see, how this plays out, because it seems like every day there's more and more information about, more sites being affected or thinking that they might be, or, interesting revelations to come. So we'll keep up on that. So the next question is from Brian. Brian asks, we've talked a lot about governmental and corporate collection data, often unknowingly or unwillingly. What are your thoughts on Little Brother and the societal acceptance of giving away personal data to social media, cloud services, etc.? And this is from the Q&A interface. So Brian is joining us right now.
Well, hi, Brian. Thanks for the question. It's actually a really deep topic of research, as Steph knows, and so many other students, past and present. We've done surveys. We've tried to get at the heart of why people give up their data. It's a very interesting question, and we've developed models for it, but frankly, we don't really have a great model as yet for why people seem to be willing to give up data in one context, and then later on they feel like their privacy's been violated because they were thinking one thing but another was going on. Basically, it's complicated. But I do have some simple comments. I don't think many people, particularly very young people, fully understand that when they're talking to a friend over the internet, that a lot of people could be listening, basically. You create a wonderful space on Facebook, you've only got your couple friends that you're interacting with, and don't realize that all this data is being collected and then used to direct advertising at you. I would think it's kind of obvious, but it's not obvious to all people. So it's an interesting question. There's been some work by Kahneman and others about the two minds. We are literally of two minds. We've got a rational mind that we use at sometimes, and then we've got the irrational side. Privacy obviously involves a lot of decisions being made by that irrational side, and then when we're confronted with the fact that we've had a privacy violation, we're surprised, horrified, etc.
And Steve, that I would also add that what Professor Wicker was just talking about, this idea that you don't necessarily you think you are sharing your information in one context, and it's actually a much larger context, is something that's frequently referred to as context collapse. And it's just this idea that if you're on Facebook or even Twitter, that you have this personal network and you think that you're sharing this information with a very small, sort of close-knit network, when if your network is 500 or 600 friends and they have friends of friends, and your privacy settings are a little bit they're different than what you thought they were, then you suffer from the context collapse, because you're sending out these messages and they're actually reaching a much wider audience than you originally intended.
Yeah, that reminds me, and I know I talked about this in class, but do take a look at Helen Nissenbaum's Contextual Integrity book. It's a great book, very readable, and it'll give you a sense of how we are of different minds in different contexts, and our ideas of what's appropriate and what's not changes from context to context.
Let's see, and Robert Platt asks from the Q&A interface here. Robert's joining us. He says, I noticed that you have included links to Wikipedia definitions on your MOOC. What authentication is available, such as permalink, to prevent people vandalizing the Wikipedia material between the time that you selected the Wikipedia definition and the present?
That's a really good question. Yeah. In fact, some of my colleagues in the law school have done some research into when Wikipedia is valid, when it's not. The good thing about Wikipedia is it's constantly policed, and it may have something that's incorrect, but over time it will be fixed. And so what I'm doing is I'm counting on literally millions of people who are looking at these entries over time to police them. I've done some of that myself. I catch little things and I correct them. A lot of other people are doing the same thing. So that's really what I'm counting on. But yeah, you're exactly right. Any link that we provide to a resource, to a paper, whatever it may be, it could be hacked when you get to it. It's a problem. We just hope you'll you'll let us know so that we can get it fixed.
Yes, please let us know.
Yeah.
I'm flipping back to the discussion board thread, and here's another pretty interesting question. I've read a lot of back and forth about antivirus software for smartphones. One camp saying that it's a must-have, and the other saying that it just slows down your phone and isn't needed as long as you can go to legitimate sites and only download apps from Google Play or iTunes. What's the current climate like in light of viruses like Heartbleed? And if phone antivirus software is important, what's your recommendation on an antivirus spyware software app?
Okay, first off, with regard to antivirus software, it's continually updated, and so it can't protect you against the latest virus. You may be a victim regardless of what you do. If someone else is a victim, though, before you, the antivirus software may be updated, so you may then be protected. Good practices are always the first line of defense. As Steph just said, be careful what you do with the phone. Don't go to random websites. Don't click on links when you don't know what's on the other end. Be careful with your email. That is the best line of defense. Antivirus software, particularly on smartphones, is still relatively new. Again, I wouldn't recommend any particular version, but I don't think it slows the phone up that much. I would give it a try. If you can live with whatever reduction in speed you see, then I would keep it. Certainly can't hurt, and it might help you.
Great. All right. And switching over to the Q&A, Robert Platt asks, would your proposal for a more private cell phone structure significantly add to its cost?
Oh, great question. But let me finish up on that previous question, because I want to make it really clear the context in which I'm answering. I'm talking about smartphones. When it comes to the patches on your laptop, on your desktop, please keep up with those. Please use antivirus software. Use Symantec, whatever the case may be. Typical laptops have a lot of holes, and it's really good to keep up with your antivirus software. There are a lot of bots out there conducting distributed denial of service attacks because people didn't keep up with their patches and their software. So smartphones are a separate class. And I was only talking about that when I said, well, there are pros and cons. With regard to your laptop, please use patches. So anyway, on with the new question. And again, who was the questioner? Was it Robert?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's switch over. And this was the questioner. Okay, so it was Robert. So Robert was asking, would your proposal for a more private cell phone structure add significantly to its cost?
Great question. No. So let's think about this for a minute, because what we're talking about doing is using a PKI to provide certificates of some kind that we can use to encrypt certain forms of communication. So when the certificate is passed to us that we will then use to show we're a valid user, encrypted through the use of a PKI. This is what we do, and we use browsers all the time. So, when you go to Amazon, when you buy something, it's the same, well, it's a similar transaction. So the cost that I would be adding to a handset would not be significant, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have it, Brian. Or Robert, sorry, Robert. And let's see. Okay, here's another question. Carmen asks, with respect to privacy, do you think that privacy protection as we know it today will become stronger and standardized similar to, oops, hold on, I just lost it. Similar to, for example, antivirus programs? And then Carmen goes on to ask, most people no longer pay for antivirus protection. It is embedded with the purchase. Will privacy protection follow the same development arc with antivirus software?
That's a great question, Carmen. I think there are two pieces to this. First, let's talk about privacy in general. Privacy has become very much the topic of the day. Not a day goes by without an article in the New York Times, the Washington Post, whatever your favorite paper may be, you're going to see articles about privacy. When I first got into this area, gosh, I hate to say it was probably like 7 or 8 years ago, months would go by before you'd see something. So the fact that so many people are interested, the fact that we've got so much going on in Congress, corporations complaining about what the NSA is doing, privacy is becoming a commodity. And anytime this happens, you're going to see people monetizing this. And so we are going to see products that will protect our privacy. Hopefully, for example, privacy-aware cellular will be an example of this. But let me get to the second piece. Privacy is not the same as a patch that you might see for your security. Privacy, in my opinion, has to be built into the product. It's not an applique. It's something that's part of the actual design. And I don't think we'll have truly privacy-aware systems until it's literally part of what we're designing and not something we add on at the end. Yes, there will be products that, for example, we can run on our computers that will limit the information that leaks out or is taken out. But I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I think it has to be built in.
And that being said, I wondered if maybe I noticed that on the discussion boards in the past couple weeks, there's been some discussion around the distinction between privacy versus security. How are they related? Are they one and the same? Are they inversely related? I wondered if maybe it would be helpful for you to comment on kind of your thoughts on how privacy and security are intertwined.
Well, I like to say that privacy is sort of the flip side of security. And let's think about that for a moment. Most of our sense of privacy violation occurs when a database gets hacked and suddenly some third party has our information and we didn't want them to have it. Typical examples, identity theft. You feel terribly violated because someone's pretending they're you, they're getting credit cards, etc. And the reason they can do that is they've obtained information from a database that should have been more secure. So privacy and security are definitely intertwined, and in many ways, security is the tool with which we secure privacy, privacy the motivation for security. They definitely go hand in hand.
Great. Well, I think that kind of brings us to sort of the end of our hangout, but Professor Wicker, if there's anything that you wanted to say to the students that have joined for tonight, or anything that you wanted to kind of communicate to the class in general, feel free to sort of have some last parting words.
Well, thanks. I just want to say thank you. I've really enjoyed teaching this class. You all have kept me energized. It's been a busy time, and whenever I felt like I needed a boost, I would go to the message pages. I've responded to some of you. I've read just about everything. I've really enjoyed it. I have appreciated your energy and how much you're into this topic. I hope that you will share this with other people. This is something that, as it's catching on, I think makes the world a better place. I know it sounds a little trite, but I think it's true. Thanks for joining me, and thank you, Steph.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. So this kind of brings our Google Hangout to an end. We'd love to hear what you thought about this. This is sort of the first time we're trying this out, so feel free to post your thoughts on the discussion board, and we'll see you online.
Thanks again. Right. Good night.
Good night. Take care.